Hey, everybody, welcome back to the How Did It Happen podcast. I'm so grateful to have you here, as I am with every episode. And before we get started with today's guest, I just want to read a recent review on Apple's Apple Podcast app that I don't know, it just gave me a lot of joy. It says authentic and ... and it's left from Embrace the Lead. And it says, great interview with Jay Riffenberry. I appreciate Mike's challenging questions of all his guests. This episode was a perfect example of Mike asking the question I was thinking as Jay was speaking. Thank you, Mike, for going deeper than a simple interview and challenging your guests to truly dive into the truth behind their message. And I read that today, one, because I thought it was cool, and two, because I would like to ask you to consider, if you haven't already, leaving a rating and a review for the podcast, wherever you listen to podcasts, whether it's on Apple, Google, Stitcher, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or wherever. Just go to the place where you can leave a review. Leave me a review. If it's 5-star, great. If it's 4, great. If it's 1, tell me where I need to get better, and give me some thoughts about it, because it really, I think, helps make the show better, and it certainly helps get the show noticed. So enough self-promotion out of the way. I'm going to move on to you with my promise of another amazing success story. And I've got Michael Unbroken on the podcast with me today. Michael, welcome to the show.
Mike, my pleasure, brother. Thank you for having me here.
Well, it's my pleasure for having you. And I came upon Michael on another podcast that I was listening to, and I actually don't remember which one it was, but I was so blown away with what he was talking about and how he was talking about it that I reached out directly and I said, hey, if there's a chance for me to have you on my podcast, I'd love to. And thankfully he responded with an affirmative. Yes. So let me tell you a little bit about Michael before we get started. From homeless to hero, Michael Unbroken is the founder of Think Unbroken, a serial entrepreneur, the best-selling author of the book Think Unbroken, an award-winning speaker, the host of the Think Unbroken podcast, a business coach, and an advocate for adult survivors of childhood trauma. Michael started his first business at only 8 years old, became an executive at 33, and has worked with multi-Fortune 500 brands, small business owners, and entrepreneurs to get clarity on their brand positioning, marketing value, and missions. Michael's spoken in over 80 countries, won investments from undercover billionaire Grant Cardone, and is on a mission to end generational trauma in his lifetime. You can connect with Michael on his website, which is thinkunbroken.com. I also have thinkunbrokenbusiness.com. Is that two separate ones, Michael, or the same?
Yep, they're separate.
Separate. Okay, so thinkunbroken.com, thinkunbrokenbusiness.com, and on Instagram at Michael Unbroken. So with that, Michael, I start every podcast with the same simple question, and that is, how did it happen for you?
I made a decision. I think that people are always looking for the magic pill. They're always looking for that one piece of advice, Mike, that'll change their life forever. And I'm going to give it to you right now. Make a decision.
And what was your decision, Michael?
My decision was to put myself first, to do the work, to show up, to do the hard things, to build my confidence and self-esteem around my effort and not the goal, to become a learner, to dive into personal development, to do whatever it took to realize the dreams that I had, to write down my goals every day, to move forward in the world like I mattered, to make decisions that were difficult time and time and time again, because I knew that if I did, eventually I could be sitting or having a conversation with you.
And what was the thing that happened, or what point in your life did you get to when you made that decision, or what was the impetus for making that decision?
The truth is, and maybe a little context would be helpful here if I give you kind of the highlight of how I got to where I was in a couple of minutes here. At 4 years old, my mother, who's a drug addict and alcoholic, she actually cut off my right index finger. My stepfather was super abusive. He put me in the hospital multiple times. I was homeless as a kid. I lived with 30 different families as a child. When I was 12, my grandmother adopted me. If you're listening, I'm biracial. I'm black and white. My grandmother is a really old racist white lady from a town in Tennessee you never heard of, right? I got high for the first time when I was 12, drunk at 13, expelled from school at 15. And then I got put into a last chance program, still didn't graduate high school, started chasing money legally, which is important. And I landed a job with a Fortune 10 company at 20 years old, no high school diploma, no college education, started making six figures. And then my life just became a complete nightmare because I hadn't done any of the work. I hadn't stepped into healing yet. And I found myself heading into 26, 350 pounds, smoking 2 packs a day, drinking myself to sleep. And that's when I attempted suicide. I was just done, Mike. Money was supposed to solve my problems, and it didn't. Well, what happened the next day, I was laying in bed. You're asking me about the decision. I'm laying in bed. It's 11 o'clock in the morning. Keep in mind, I'm 350 pounds. I'm smoking a joint, eating chocolate cake, and watching the CrossFit Games. Like, dude, if that's not rock bottom, I don't know what is. And I got up and I went in the bathroom and I looked at myself in the mirror and I asked myself, what are you willing to do to have the life that you want to have? And I remembered being 8 years old and the water company turning off our water. Grew up in Indiana, blistering hot Indiana summer, August day. And I took this little blue bucket from the backyard and I walked across the street to a neighbor's house. I turned on their spigot, and for the first time in my life, I stole water. And I said, when I'm a grown-up, this will not be my life. And it wasn't from a financial aspect, but it was in every other way. And as I'm here having this memory, looking in the mirror, I asked myself a question. What was I willing to do to have the life that I wanted to have? And the words, no excuses, just results, started reverberating in my body. And that was the decision I made. I made a choice to stop putting up with my own bullshit and create change in my life and stop playing the victim. 11 years later, here I am talking to you.
I think it's, I'm going to use the word funny. It's not funny at all. You described this childhood that you had. You didn't call that a nightmare. What you called a nightmare was what happened after you got this great job at the Fortune 10 or 20 company. I thought that was really an interesting description. And how did you come to get that job, Michael? So, I mean, you show up and like you said, no high school diploma, arguably, now I don't know what the job was, so maybe that'll tell me, but arguably not in the ideal position to be considered as a candidate for that kind of company, I'm thinking.
Yeah. So, and a great point about the way I deciphered between what was a nightmare and what was not.
Yeah.
And that comes from the reality that I'm not culpable for the bad things that happened to me as a child. Nobody is. I'm only responsible for the choices I make today. And so I think that's why I look at those things and go, I didn't have control over it. It sucks. Yes, but I can't let that be the thing that keeps me stuck. So after not graduating high school on time, I thought I was going to join the military. I had two goals as a child. Don't die, become a Marine Corps Scout sniper. Those were my two goals. But my senior year, I tore my patella tendon and a bursa sac in my right knee. Couldn't pass MEPS, passed ASVAB, could have literally done any job I wanted to. And that job that I wanted was Marine Corps Scout Sniper, couldn't get in. And I was like, okay, I don't actually know what to do with my life now. And that was terrifying to me. And I was in this position, I was working these random jobs, warehouse jobs, server jobs, bullshit stuff. And I thought to myself, I want to make $100,000 a year. And doing it legally was so incredibly important. I have family in prison for life. I've been in handcuffs. And as of today, my 3 childhood best friends have been murdered. I was on my way there, Mike. I was in the streets. I was selling drugs, breaking into houses, stealing cars, running with guns, running from the cops. It was inevitable. but I made that decision. I said, do this legally. And I got a job because it was the only thing that made sense in my mind. I got a job working for a fast food restaurant as a manager. And from that, I ended up becoming a general manager in training. And I started making like $35,000 a year, which when you're 18, that's like $1 million.
Yeah, sure.
Right.
Yeah, right.
But the thing that happened, I started learning all of these incredible skills. As a child, I had 52 people under me. I was scheduling, I was doing inventory, I was doing payroll, I was doing shrink and loss. I was doing everything that you do as someone as a general manager would, without getting paid for it. And like, it was amazing because the two people that I learned under taught me so much about what it means to be a manager, to be a leader, and to run a business. And so I did that for a couple of years, and it's exhausting, dude. It is the most exhausting thing I've ever done in my life. I'd go to work at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, get off at 2 in the morning, have a day off, come back at 6 a.m., work till 4 in the afternoon. And I did that rinse and repeat for 2 years. And I was having a conversation with a friend. I'm going to age myself slightly here, on MySpace. And this friend of mine went to the same high school as me. We grew up in the same neighborhood. We did the same things, right? And he had gotten a job working for an insurance company. And Mike, that blew my fucking mind, dude. I didn't know you could do that. I didn't know you could do that. And I was sitting there, I was like, oh, I know how to make this 100,000, because I thought it was going to be fast food. I thought I'd become a regional manager. That was the path. Yeah, I was like, by the time I'm 21, I'll be a regional manager. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, nope, I don't want to do this. And so for the next year, right, from 19 and a half through 20 and a half, I just got better at writing resumes, interviewing, writing cover letters. I must have went on 20 interviews in a year with only insurance companies. All of them turned me down except one. And the one who didn't happened to be a Fortune 10 company. It was the last interview I did, as that goes, of course. And I came in as an assistant to a sales agent. And then I became a sales agent. And then I got licensed to sell insurance in 48 states. And then I built a book of business. And then shortly after I turned 21, I cashed my first check for $10,000 and immediately went and spent it at the mall. So, it was just this process of learning these skills and being very, very, very specific about the goal. Make $100,000 a year legally by the time I'm 21. And I put all of my effort into that.
And was that a like a commission job, like sort of insurance where you get paid on the policies, Michael, or was it something? It was different?
Split. So we had a damn near minimum wage base salary, and the rest was commission.
Okay. And when you described 30 families, your mother with the hand, your dad going away, do you have a relationship with either of your parents or any of the families that took care of you or didn't take care of you? I don't know. During, I'm just wondering what attachment you have to that besides the experience.
Yeah, none. My mom died of a drug overdose. I haven't seen my stepfather in well over 15 years. Never met my real father. I was so young when I was around those other families, so I grew up in the Mormon church, which is an interesting little catalyst in all of this. And in that,
in Indiana? The Mormon
in
Church
Indiana.
In Indiana. Okay. I wouldn't necessarily put those together.
I wouldn't either. And so, yeah. And though there were good families in that, there were bad families in that, as there is with anything. So I'm not like singling anything out. And no, I don't, I'm an orphan in the sense that there's no one above me, but I have an amazing community. I have amazing siblings who we have grown so much closer together over the years. And I got the Unbroken Nation, man, and we're 100,000 strong. So
nice. And so I think what I want to do first is go, you described, sitting in your apartment, eating the chocolate, watching CrossFit games, 350 pounds and making a decision then, but it seems to me that there was a decision made earlier when you decided you were not going to, or you experimented with and then decided you weren't going to go down the drug gang, whatever route that was, and you were actually going to get, like you said, make money legally. What was there something that happened where you were like, holy shit, it was too close. I can't do that again? Or was there, like, and I mean, you mentioned what happened to your friends and stuff. It seemed like there was a decision then as well.
Well, so here's the reality. Growing up, I would go to Pendleton Prison, just west of Indianapolis, every Sunday with my grandma to see my uncle. And we did that for years. And the most terrifying thing to me as a kid was to go to prison, because I saw it all the time. Like, it was such a consummate part of my life. I got all these pictures of him in the blue jumpsuit and me there with my other brother and my grandma, the family. You know, we'd go there on Easter and Christmas. Like, it was crazy, right? And I remember I made a decision very young, like right when I first started selling drugs, when I was 12 years old. I was like, the cops will kill me before they put me in handcuffs. And I was serious, because I was like, there's no way I'm going to prison. It's just not going to happen. And I'm lucky. I mean, there's no question. There's some type of serendipitous, otherworldly force that has brought me to this moment. I have been shot at. I have run from the cops. I've been in handcuffs. I have gotten expelled from school for selling drugs, the whole nine. But the one moment that changed everything for me was, so I'm in my senior year of high school. I'm in my junior year of high school, and my best friend, this is the dude we did everything with, lived up the road from me a few houses. And he came over to my house and he was like, hey, I got a line on some cocaine. Let's go up a couple cities north of Indianapolis, buy this, come back down. We'll break it up. We'll flip it. We'll make more money. Because we were entrepreneurs. I mean, we were selling pseudoephedrine. We were selling weed. We were selling like all this stuff. And it was survival. Like, we didn't have gold chains. We didn't have cars. We were rolling around on bicycles, just trying to make it, like, for real. Like, whatever people envision drug dealing as, like, that ain't real. The realness is we're just trying to get some food. And he comes over to my house this night. I will never understand why. My gut was like, do not go with him. And we had done everything together. My brother, my best friend, the person I would die for. And I was like, I can't. I was heartbroken in that moment, because we literally did everything together. And it's not like this was the first time we were going to do something like this. And so what happens is he leaves. I go to Big Lots the next day, which was around the corner off 30th in Georgetown, where his mom worked. And I walk in and she's like, have you seen him? And I'm like, what do you mean? He didn't come home last night? She's like, no. Now, that's not uncommon. We were street kids. You know, we might be gone a day or two. Well, another day goes by and I bump into her in the neighborhood. She goes, he got arrested. What's crazy about this, Mike, is I was of age in Indiana and he was not. If I would have been in the car that night, I would not be talking to you. Wow. And that became the real catalyst for why I said, I got to do this legally. It was too close to home. He'd been arrested before, but it had never been that serious. All of our friends had been arrested before. That's what my family, we were used to it. I was used to being expelled from school and from running the streets and getting high all day long. That was normal. But for whatever reason, that night, my gut said, if you do this, this will be the worst mistake of your life.
Well, your gut was right.
Yeah. And that's the lesson I took from that. And that's the thing, like, I wish if people would really hear what I'm about to say, it'll change your life forever. If you trust your instincts and your gut more than you trust your head, you will do amazing things in the world.
Okay, so how do you tell difference, Michael? How do you work through that with people? Because trust your guts and instincts more than you trust your head. What is, help me understand what that means.
Yeah, great question. Think about this. The human brain serves one purpose. Really, at the essence of it, it's survival. It's the only thing the human brain wants to do is operate the body so that you can procreate and live long enough for your creation to procreate. That's it.
And then, yeah, and then you're useless.
Exactly. And then you're useless. And so at that, when you understand that your brain only wants to operate within a scope of creating safety in your life so that you survive, you need to understand that your gut, your instinct, like your other brain, as they will call it, your gut. Why do they always say trust your gut? Because it's never wrong. It's never steered you in the wrong direction. I think Tony Robbins says it better than anyone. He goes, if you're in your head, you're dead. And he's spot on in business and life and relationships and friendships and the food that you eat. Like, come on, man. You know, you went to the buffet that one time and you're like, I better not eat that. And you eat it anyway. And then you're sick that night. Your gut is never wrong. And so what I'm always trying to tell people is it's a process. You have to learn it because we've actually learned to turn it off, Mike. For many people who've come from a traumatic background, the most dangerous thing that you could ever do is operate as yourself, to be yourself. That's really the essence of your gut, right? But then you also parlay that with growing up in, especially if you live in Western societies, an industrialized school system. Walk on the right side of the line, raise your hand to go to the bathroom. You color the moon purple and your teacher ostracizes you in front of the entire classroom and criticizes you. Says, you are not special. Who do you think you are to color the moon purple? Go sit over there. Get away from everybody, weirdo.
Yeah.
And then you become 18, 36, 52, and you don't know how to make decisions for yourself. It's been stripped from you. You have to rebuild your identity. That's what following your gut is. And the way that you rebuild your identity is by you literally do the thing that you feel compelled to do. And you will learn in that and you will make mistakes in that, but you will be honoring your truth and your reality. I tell people all the time, the number one key to life, like if you can figure this thing out through the trial and error of it, your life will feel so incredible. I personally, I only do what I want to do, and I never do what I don't want to do. Now, that doesn't mean there's not monotony in there that moves me towards my goals, and I have to do some things in that. But like the reality is, like if I woke up this morning and I was like, I don't want to do this podcast, I'd be like, I'm going to reschedule it. I don't feel good. I need to take care of myself. If I'm like, I need to sell a company, if I need to write a book, if I need to do whatever calls me that makes me feel like me, I am going to do it. And that is the key. And it's difficult and it's scary and it's uncomfortable. And for most of us, we've never done it before. And so we're learning for the first time in real life, in real time, how to be ourselves. Think about it. We've all had this moment, a turning point where you go, I am tired of not being me. And it changes everything when you make that decision.
So the gut thing, as I heard you, I was thinking to myself, okay, so your gut tells you a story when, as opposed to your head, where your head, you can tell your head a story. So in other words, you like when you say trust your gut and your instincts rather than your head, is that what you're talking about? Like your gut's telling you, you're not telling your gut a story, right? And it's not responding to you. It's just, you're not even subconscious, but when you get into your head, you're like, oh, I wonder, well, it could be this, or well, it could be that. And you're basically wheeling around in stories in your head that are authored by you, may have no, they may have no grounding in reality or anything, but that's just what you're doing. And while your gut is instead sort of completely separated from that. Is that kind of what you're saying?
I think that is one of the most profound ways anybody could ever reiterate that. I think you're spot on, because it very much is like, I don't even argue with my gut ever. I just do what it says. Right. But when I get in my head about stuff and I'm weighing it back and forth, and I break out the spreadsheet and I write down the pros and cons and I think about all the things, I don't make decisions that way. It's almost impossible. Grant Cardone taught me something really phenomenal one time. He goes, commit first and figure out the rest later. And so much of that, I think, is really about trusting yourself that you're making the right choice. Because whenever I've tried to lay out the roadmap, whenever I've tried, like I'm totally all about the idea of start with the end in mind. So let me be clear about that. But that's the only thing I'm starting with. Step one. All the rest of it, I figure it out as we go. And I think that's really the inherent part about trusting yourself, that you can go and move towards that goal and make it come to fruition.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that. And this is sort of a tangent question, but I'm going to ask you because I think you'll have a cool perspective on it. Do you see, or do you recognize a difference between the word choice and the word decision?
Interesting question. I've kind of always parlayed them as the same thing. I think it's really per the definition of the individual and how they decide that or choose that to mean for them. I would almost, to me, I'm like, I want to actually look up the definitions of both of them right now and see if there's a differentiation.
Yeah. Well, there is a differentiation. And the reason I ask is because I actually have a chapter in my book about choices versus decisions. Because for me, reflecting on a lot of the things that I had done over my years as an entrepreneur and growing a business and all that, and getting myself in a spot where I felt lost and confused and uncertain and stuck in all of those things. As I was reflecting on it when I was writing the book, it occurred to me that a lot of that was the result of making decisions. So I consider decisions to be like quick things, right? Decisions to, stuff's coming at you as a business owner or whatever. You're like, yeah, do that. Yeah, do that. Yeah, do that. It's not a thoughtful process. It's more of an instinct process. And when I learned, or I convinced myself or whatever, that I really needed to be making choices, meaning thoughtful, reflective, based on what I really wanted to accomplish, as opposed to what needed to be done in the moment or something. It opened my mind up and my capabilities up to a level that I just wasn't achieving when I was making decisions. I could be all wet with that, but I just feel like for me, that was meaningful. And when you said, you always do what I want to do, I thought to myself, yeah, that's a choice, man. Yeah. Anyway, I
see where you're coming from. I think it's really fascinating. I've never had anyone broach that with me before, and now I'm in contemplation. And what I'm wondering is, are your choices really just decisions based on the historical data that you've had that present you with an understanding of possible outcome?
Yeah, and it could be that. It could be that, or I could be just telling myself a story that makes sense to me. And when I use those different words, it has meaning to me. It makes a difference in how I feel about what I've done.
Yeah, I get it. And I think you're spot on too, because like from a entrepreneurial standpoint, like you alluded to it, you have to decide like right now. You can't do it tomorrow, because if you wait till tomorrow, it's too late. Right. But what I hear in you saying choices is there's a little bit more emphasis in the space of time to create contemplation, to make a deeper meaning of what it is that you're about to do.
It feels like there might be more freedom in it too, Michael, where decisions is sort of something that's, maybe, I don't know, maybe not as free, but I don't want to belabor the point, but I just wanted to throw that out.
It's interesting
perspective on it. So you're lying on this couch and, watching the games, 350 chocolate. You make a decision. What's the first thing you did? How did you
Yeah.
manifest that decision or that choice?
Yeah.
To make
Right.
it.
Dude, yeah. I'm going to have to write a whole book just about this now, Mike.
Yeah.
So I can figure, that's why I write books, so I can figure it out. You know, the very first thing that I did is I recognized that I was illiterate in life. And what I mean by that is, you know, growing up, since I didn't ever go to school, since I was never really taught money, finances, nutrition, health, how to take care of myself, I really just kind of started thinking about, well, what's the easiest first thing that I can do? And it was like, okay, I got to quit smoking. That felt like really practical. I need to quit smoking. I need to quit drinking every day. I need to quit getting high when I wake up before I go to work. I need to start moving my body. Like, I used to go to the gym every day after work, and I would
Even when you were
never
at
make it
350.
in, and I would never make it inside, because in the parking lot, as they do, there is a McDonald's and a bar. And so I would sit in my car and I'd smoke a cigarette and drive over to McDonald's and get a Big Mac, extra value meal, super size, give me all the fries. And I'd sit there in the parking lot and I'd eat this, and I'd go to that bar that was next door. This is the worst setup. Never put a gym next to a bar and a McDonald's. I have no idea what these guys are doing. And then I'd go to the bar and I'd smoke another cigarette, and I walk to my car, I'd look at the gym, and I'd be like, tomorrow. And I did that for a very long time. And then I stopped doing that. And I started taking my ass inside. And I started doing yoga. And this was a time when 11, 12 years ago, men did not do yoga, especially not men in Indiana. So I ordered some DVDs. For those of you who don't know what that is, it's a disc, you put it in a thing. And so I would like watch these DVDs and do yoga in my living room. And then I would push myself. And I eventually went to do yoga in a studio. And now it's still part of my life. I do it all the time. It was really about just looking at the behavioral patterns. I think instinctively, again, coming to that gut thing, I believe we know what we should and should not be doing to take care of ourselves. And it's honoring that. And it was honoring the truth that my precedent for taking care of myself had never been established because no one took care of me. And so I had to learn how to navigate that. I mean, even this week, I had to go to the dentist, whereas 20 years ago, I would never go to the dentist, ever. Right. And so it's the little things. You start to build yourself up and understand how to manage your life and take care of all the things that you know you need to do. But again, it really just comes back to that gut, because I knew I shouldn't be getting drunk every night and eating McDonald's. But it wasn't. Please.
That experience sort of reminds me of David Goggins, and when he in his, I don't know if you've read his book.
Yeah, of course. Well, we grew up 20 minutes from each other.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So you were working fast food. He was working pest disposal or something. And he talked about that he worked, I think, at night or later shift, but every time he got off, he would get fast food, go home, eat it, drink a big milkshake. Right. Right.
And that's what I was doing. It's so funny to me how often people be like, oh, you parallel David Goggins. I'm like, our lives are not that different. They're really not, you know. And here's what's interesting. A lot of us share that in common. He and I are not outliers. We're not special somehow. It's very common. And the difference, I mean, really, truly, dude, the difference between why people are starting to know my name and people know his name and people know your name is because we've made decisions to make our lives better, make our lives different, to do the hard things, to grow, to change, to heal. And, you know, there's something really special about these moments in which you look at and you reflect on those things that you've done, because they are hard and they're uncomfortable and they're difficult. And often you have to get incredibly vulnerable with yourself. But in doing so, like, that starts the pendulum, right? And I'm always thinking, like, if I can make my pendulum swing over the top of the bar, I can create centrifugal force and really skyrocket my life. The pendulum doesn't have to come back the other way, but maybe a domino effect is a better analogy for it. I'm pushing that first domino and I'm just watching the rest fall as I go. But it just really starts with that first thing that you do.
And how long did it take before you knew you weren't going back? if you can remember? And how much help did you need? Was this just sort of a rugged individualist approach, or was it, because most people will say, well, I can't do it on my own, right? They'll say that. Well, I know they can, probably can, but they'll say they can't and use that as a whatever, a barrier to moving forward. Yeah, whatever you want to call it.
Totally. So, I think that the most important thing for me was recognizing that I couldn't do it alone, because as I tried to do it alone, my life got worse. I mean, in 30 minutes, you know more about me than people who knew me for 27 years. Like, what sense does that make? And so I'm in the midst of this journey over a decade ago, and I'm like going to therapy and group therapy, men's group therapy, CBT, doing EMDR, gestalt work, chair work. I started getting into coaching and having a coach and reading all the books. Right now, last year I read 62 books. This year I'll bring it down a little bit, but I've read over 500 books in the last decade. I've gone to countless seminars. I've been literally the only civilian in rooms full of PhDs for continuing education classes in childhood trauma development, because I needed to learn. I have over 30 certifications and certificates today because of that. Still, I have no college diploma, no high school diploma, right? Because why? Because I want to be the best version of myself. But I've had to ask for help, and I've had to put myself into uncomfortable and vulnerable positions and say, I can't do this on my own, because no one can. No one can. Name a person who's ever done anything great by themselves. You can't. We are a communal species by nature, and we can rise with other people around us. And I have just found, even today, I have the greatest, in my personal opinion, because they're mine, I have the greatest mentors in personal development in my personal life right now. Like, it's unbelievable. People I've looked up to for years who are now mentoring me, who I get to spend real time with, real connection with, grow with, right? And I look at my life and I go, in 20 years, I'm going to be where they are. And so I'm just mimicking, modeling, and mastering what they're doing. The list goes on and on. The people who are in my life creating massive change. You can't do this alone. You just can't.
And when did you decide that you were going to move away from this great career in insurance? Was it at the same time that you made this other choice that you've just described to us, or was it later down the road where you were thinking, wow, look what I've done, and how can I channel that into helping other people? Or was there a bunch of steps in the middle? How did it go?
Yeah, so I quit that job before this journey really started.
Oh,
so
okay.
I realized, I hated working for a corporate company. They had metrics on everything. They timed our bathroom breaks, man. No joke. And I was miserable. The money wasn't worth it. And the other part of it too is, so this is pre-Obamacare. So this is early 2000s. And I would have to tell people, I'll never forget the day I knew I was done. A woman called me and she was like, you're the 5th person I've talked to today. My little boy has leukemia and nobody will help me. And I was just like, I can't help you either. This company's not going to give you insurance. Again, this is pre-Obamacare. So you didn't have to cover pre-existing conditions. And I'd had that conversation like 10,000 times over 5 years. You know what I mean? But for whatever reason, that was the straw. And the next morning I walked in and I quit. And, I was making that company millions and millions of dollars in policy. And I was making, at that time, 170, like a crazy amount of money as a kid. And it just wasn't worth it. It just wasn't worth it. I felt like I was sacrificing who I was. And while I was in the midst of that, I had started a little side hustle. I started a photography business because I had actually always loved photography. And when I quit that, I got serious about building that business. And one of the biggest mistakes that I've made in terms of being an entrepreneur is I quit that insurance job and I realized I had to, it was the right choice to make, or right decision, right? See, you got me thinking, Mike. And so in that moment, I quit that job. I start the photography business, start to take it serious. It takes me 3 years to make money in that business. And all of my savings went away. And, but next thing you know, it became super successful. I became one of the top paid photographers in Indiana, traveled the world doing destination wedding, been on cover of magazines, worked for Coca-Cola, Red Bull, Four Roses, Indianapolis Motor Speedway, all that stuff. Right. But in the midst of building that business is when all of this happened. And it was, man, it was just chaotic for a long time, just so chaotic, because I was just trying to figure out how to navigate it all. And then I got to this point where I was like, at 29 years old, and I knew I had to get out of Indiana. I needed to leave my relationship. I needed to close down the studio, even though I was doing really well. I left at right before I was going to break through the next level of that career, because I just could not emotionally handle it while trying to do more deeper work. Because I'd been doing stuff like, I finally had quit smoking and I was going to yoga, but then it was all the chaos of all of it. I couldn't manage it anymore emotionally. And on top of running a business and having a team of people under me and working every Saturday and Sunday for 5 straight years and,
Right.
The whole nine. And so I just shut it all down. And I said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go and focus only on me. And so even though I was going to therapy and I was reading the books and I was into personal development, all that, I had never put it at the forefront. And so when I left Indiana, I moved to Portland, Oregon. I'm 30 years old. And for the next 2 years, I just really only focused on me. Now, in that time frame, of course, I had to get a job and, kind of start my next entrepreneurial endeavor, and became a stockholder in a couple of different businesses, and got into some real estate stuff, and became a partner in a retail business, and started Think Unbroken and all that stuff over the course of now almost the last 7 years. But one of the best things that I've ever done in my life was I just basically took a year plus off, and I did nothing but healing work. And it was expensive and it was time consuming, but man, it was totally worth it.
And how'd you pick Portland, Michael? Where did that come from?
So, one of the things that happened in my career is I started to meet people everywhere as a photographer. And I wanted to go somewhere where I didn't know anyone. Like, that felt to me like really important. Even today, I don't particularly know why, but it felt really important. And so that was part of it. And the other part was there was a specialist in childhood trauma who had a group that I wanted to join. And he didn't do it online. You had to be there. And it was like, no one else in the country offers this. And so again, Mike, my question to myself was, what are you willing to do to have the life that you want to have? No excuses, just results. Closed the business, ended the relationship, packed a car, drove across country, did what I needed to do.
So super gutsy, right? On two fronts. And you made the insurance thing not sound gutsy, but it's really gutsy. You're making a lot of money. And there were 2 things the money wasn't doing for you. One, it wasn't making you happy in your life, in your job. And 2, it wasn't making you happy in your life, right? So you were getting fed money that wasn't feeding you in either one of parts of their life. But that happens to a lot of people. A lot of people are in that exact same situation, but they don't feel like they have the courage or the confidence or whatever to cut off the feeding, like you did, the money, cut off the money and start over, be in a position to focus on themselves. And so it takes a lot of courage. That's not an easy decision to make. And I think it's one of the ones that holds so many people back from what they really truly want to do or want to become.
Yeah. And there were sacrifices in that too, because I was making a lot of money. I had a great car and a great condo. And my girlfriend at the time, after I'd quit that job, I'm a year, call it 2 years into the photography business. I'm not making any money, man.
Yeah,
I'd blown through all my savings over those 2 years, paying rent, car insurance, food, the whole nine. And then I was in this situation where I was like, hey, I need to borrow money from you so I can help pay our rent this month. And that sucked.
Yeah, that sucks. Yeah.
That sucked, dude. And look, that's the part of entrepreneurship people don't want to talk about.
No.
That's the part they don't bring to light, is borrowing money from your girlfriend, is shooting whatever you have to shoot to make $25 and so on and so forth. Now, I will say this, I got a mentor. He taught me how to actually run the damn business. And next thing you know, I was making 15 grand on a Saturday. Right. But like, the reality was, until you figure that part out, there's a lot of suffering, and that money, like, I'm so glad I made the money I did with the company, because it helped me for those first couple of years really understand how hard entrepreneurship truly is, because there's no way I would have made it, right, to magazine covers and to awards and to shooting weddings in Cozumel and Jamaica and all over the, all things. And so, it's really fascinating to me that people want to make entrepreneurship seem like this beautiful, grandiose thing, because in one hand it is. There's freedom. Like, I love the fact that I'm an owner still to this day. I own Think Unbroken. I own partnership in my other companies. I own real estate investments. I own those things. But man, you got to suffer for a long time before it starts to make sense.
Right.
It's a real life MBA.
And without the suffering, it doesn't have meaning. Anything that comes too easy is, probably easy to discount too, right?
Yeah.
It's easy to.
Totally.
So
and then
go ahead.
I was just going to say, and then the other thing about it too is, like, people fail to understand, like, if you really want to be an entrepreneur, it takes every second of every single day.
Yeah.
Until it doesn't. And that takes a long time. There's no overnight success. Think about this. I've been doing this for almost 6 years. We just met, Mike.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? I've been on this journey for a decade plus. It takes time. And whatever you think, if I could give people a magic pill for entrepreneurship, this pill would be, whatever you think's about to happen is not going to happen, and add 5 years.
That's a good, yeah. I say, the stories that get told are Red Bull and pizza one day and $1 billion valuation the next. And that's the story the Wall Street Journal wants to write. But those stories are so rare. And if you become an entrepreneur and that's what you think is going to be your story, the likelihood that you will end up significantly depressed and disappointed are really, really high. Yeah. Because as you said, those stories aren't the real stories. You got to get in deep and see what those people actually went through. So thank you for, reiterating how difficult it was. When was Michael Unbroken born? Like, how did that concept come?
So I was watching Kobe Bryant's Muse, this documentary about him from, I don't know, was it 2012 or something? It's fairly old. And I remember him being like, after his Achilles injury, he was like, man, I had to figure out how to get back into this. And he was like, I came up with this concept, the Black Mamba.
Yeah, Black Mamba, yeah.
And he was like, when I'm the Black Mamba, nothing will stop me. And then I started thinking about how true that has been for a lot of people. Think about Clark Kent turning to Superman, right? It's an alter ego. Beyonce turning into Sasha Fierce. Sean Carter being Jay-Z.
Yeah, Batman.
Yeah, it's that is my Batman. Michael Unbroken is my Black Mamba, my Jay-Z. When I'm about to get on stage in front of 10,000 people and I'm about to shit my pants, I'm like, yo, you got to show up and perform. You have to be unbroken right now. You have to be this leader. You have to show up this way. And then what's funny is now I actually don't know which one is more me anymore. You know what I mean? It's like, it's suddenly I am Batman every day. Like, Batman is Batman. Bruce Wayne is the alter ego. And I feel like every single day, the deeper I get into knowing who I am, the more I do this work, the more I teach, the more I speak, the more I write. This is so true of who I truly am. And it's the greatest thing. It just came to me like in this light bulb moment. But you know, the Think Unbroken, the brand, this actually came because what I recognized about my own human experience is ever since I was a little kid, people called me broken. Whenever you don't fit in the mold, they call you broken. Wearing clothes from the Goodwill, showering at school, stealing food to survive. You're broken, right? Doing these things in my life. And then in relationships, people would say that. And I was like, I'm not broken. I'm not. That is not who I am. That's not how I believe. That's not how I think. And then Think Unbroken became a reality over 5 years ago.
Nice.
Light
Thank you
bulb
for sharing
moment.
that. Yeah, that's remarkable. And I love it, by the way. It so speaks to what you're doing. It's like what you've been through and what you're doing and what you're helping people with. Huh. You know, when I was listening to your podcast, you said, I don't know if you were talking about a person or if you were reading a review like I did at the beginning, Michael, but you said someone was crediting you with, you know, saving their life, and you accepted the compliment, and then you took it in a totally different direction that I wasn't expecting. And you said, I don't save anybody's life or something like that. And then you went on to explain why. What was happening there?
Yeah, you know, so the first time someone ever messaged me that, I was so caught off guard because that's not why I do this, right? I don't do this to be your hero. I'm not coming to save you. I promise you I'm not. I'm never going to be swooping in to rescue you from your own shit. When people send me that, it's so warming and beautiful, and it's such a great reminder of why I do this, but it is not why I do this, right? You following? And so they sent me this, and it's quite frequent when this happens. Someone will say, hey, you saved my life. Your podcast saved my life. You say, I'm like, no, I did not. You saved your life. You had to show up. You had to do the work. You had to take out the pen and paper. You had to listen to the podcast and read the book and go to the conference. You had to do this. I don't know you. I'm just simply here to give you what I know. That's it. I've never walked in your shoes. The only life I have ever saved is my own.
Yeah. So you're not saving lives. You're helping people understand that they can be the heroes in their own stories.
Yeah, entirely.
Right.
And because like the truth is, I'm not special. I don't know anything other people don't know. The only difference between me and other people is I'm willing to face the fear. That's it. I'm willing to see what's on the other side of being terrified, because that fear, like that's the catalyst, man. That thing that keeps you awake at night, that thing that you know you need to do. If you do that thing, your life will be different. And I just want to show people that it's possible.
I recorded an episode yesterday with a guy named Philip Stutz, and he was telling me about how he has done a couple of sessions with psychedelics to try to get to reveal the part about him that was broken. And I don't want to get into psychedelics here, but one of the things he said was like, he said to me, it was almost like he would chastise me a little bit when I asked him about the trauma, because he says, you know, dude, like everybody's got trauma. And I was like, okay. Okay. And I'm trying to reconcile, you know, mine against, you know, whatever his was. And I'm like, okay, so I guess, and broadly, I could certainly create a definition that would apply to everybody, but I don't think that, I don't know that, I don't know what to make of it. And you're an expert. So I'm going to ask you, does every person have CT, like childhood trauma, and are there degrees, and or is everybody sort of, whatever trauma you had is your trauma and it's just as valid as anybody else's? How do you think about it, Michael? And how do you help people get past it?
That's a great question. I think that here's how I choose to define trauma, especially in this scope, as opposed to a DSM or medical terminology.
Yeah.
I look at trauma as anything that has impacted your life so negatively that it impacts your behaviors today. And what do I mean by that? Go back for a moment. I talked about this idea of coloring the moon purple, getting chastised, never stepping up for yourself again, being embarrassed, being afraid to show your art, being afraid to share who you are in the world because of that experience, right? That's what I think about trauma being. It's not just the beatings. It's not the cutting or being molested or being locked in closets or hurt or burned or beat. Like, those things are trauma, but it's also the things that in passing most people would miss, but has impacted your life so negatively that you feel like you can't be yourself. Okay. There's a causation and correlation of every experience we've ever had. Everything, we are the sum total of all of our experiences leading to this moment. And so to dismiss the idea that that thing that happened 48 years ago doesn't impact you, I think that's dangerous, right? Now, of course, there's trauma around divorce and hospitalizations and physical injury and not being taken care of. The list goes on and on and on. And those things you can measure. You can look at the ACE study by Dr. Felitti and the California Center for Disease Control and Kaiser Permanente that they did in the 90s. It's indicative of the truth that on average, 84% of people in civilization, all planet Earth, right, have been impacted by childhood trauma. That's what you can study and research. I would argue it's higher, 95%, probably 100, really, like realistically. We all had something bad happen to us. It's true.
Right. Particularly if your definition is very broad. I mean, yeah, of course. Okay. Huh.
And the one thing I think about that too, which has probably carried more weight in my life than anything, is that if 99% of people have had something bad happen to them, maybe you're not that alone.
Yeah, for sure. There's a big community.
Yeah.
There's a big community. And I remember I read somewhere you said, being a human is violent, something like that. Humans are violent, right? And it only takes a moment of bad reaction on the part of an adult or even a colleague or a friend or whatever to really damage you. Like, so I get that part, like, because you have to be really, especially as an adult, you have to be very careful, right? Because you know much better when you're in a position to damage someone than you did when you were, a kid and it's a big responsibility.
Yeah, it is. And, even think about the way that your past impacts your relationships, your career, right, your business, your intimacy. I mean, everything that's ever happened to you, it matters. Don't be dismissive. I think the reason let me rephrase that. I know that the reason that my life was a disaster when I was in my 20s, even though all of the things pointed to like, wow, you made it, is because I hadn't yet acknowledged the reality that my past was impacting my present behavior.
All right. Instead, you were what? Just thinking.
I was pushing it down. I was saying, I'm bigger than this. I'm a man. Those things don't matter. I carry a finger on my hand that was cut off. It's there every day. I can't run from the surgeries, from the scar tissue, from the discoloration, from the skin grafts, to not being able to feel it. I can't run from that. Yeah. It's right there. And yet I tried to. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. I don't, that's not going to hold me back. I'm, like you said, I'm strong enough. I'm, when you're not.
And you saying that is holding you back.
Yeah.
And that's what's so fascinating.
So Michael, who do you work with, and how do, who should contact you? Who do you, where do you have to be in order for you to be the person that someone wants to connect with?
Yeah. You've got to already be convinced that you're ready to change. I'm not going to do that for you.
Yeah.
You have to already be willing to answer that question. What are you willing to do to have the life that you want to have? And if it's anything less than no excuses, just results, I'm not your guy. Someone is, but I'm not. Right. And so, I think that if you're in this position in your life where you're willing to do whatever it takes, pack up the car, leave the relationship, close the business, move to Oregon, you know what I'm saying? Like whatever it takes, if that's where you're at, I'm your guy. Anything less of that, you need to do more work, grab some more books, listen to more podcasts.
Okay. So if you're ready to get off the couch, put down the chocolate and actually see yourself in the CrossFit Games as opposed to watching some other people, that's a time.
There you go, Mike.
Michael, it's been such a pleasure having you on. Thank you so much for being here. And I've learned a ton, and thank you for the work that you're doing. Is there anything else that you want to leave people with in terms of connection or advice or inspiration or whatever?
Yeah. The thing is, like, again, now you're in my head, Mike, you're a decision away. You really are. It's right here. It's waiting for you. I created the Think Unbroken podcast because I wanted to take these kind of conversations and give them to the world, as well as coach people in the podcast. And so Think Unbroken podcast, it's on all the platforms, or thinkunbrokenpodcast.com.
Got it. Michael Unbroken, thank you so much.
It's my pleasure, my friend. Thank you.
Is brought to you by WINJECT Studios. We are an all-in-one educational platform for podcasters that revolutionizes how hosts leverage content to increase engagement with listeners, downloads, and income. We come together to focus on community, collaboration, and collective impact. For more information on how you can interact directly with our hosts, access exclusive live content with offers you can't get anywhere else from our official partners, join our purpose-driven community by visiting www.winject.com. If you're ready to build a career doing what you love, then we're ready to see you there.